Hi there, Michael. Welcome to Lip Lock, where we are going to be reading Twilight together. So go ahead and get cozy in your book and turn to page 3. That is where the chapter starts. 1. First Sight. My mother drove me to the airport with the windows rolled down. It was 75 degrees in Phoenix, the sky a perfect cloudless blue. I was wearing my favorite shirt, sleeveless white eyelet lace. I was wearing it as a farewell gesture. My carry-on item was a parka. In the Olympic Peninsula of northwest Washington state, a small town named Forks exists under a near constant cover of clouds. It rains on this inconsequential town more than on any other place in the United States of America. It was from this town and its gloomy, omnipresent shade that my mother escaped with me when I was only a few months old. It was in this town that I'd been compelled to spend a month every summer until I was 14. That was the year I finally put my foot down. These past 3 summers, my dad, Charlie, vacationed with me in California for 2 weeks instead. It was to Forks that I now exiled myself, an action that I took with great horror. I detested Forks. So detested means you do not like something. She detests this town that she lives in. I loved Phoenix. I loved the sun and the blistering heat. I loved the vigorous, sprawling city. Bella, my mom said to me, the last of 1,000 times before I got on the plane, you don't have to do this. My mom looks like me, except with short hair and laugh lines. I felt a spasm of panic as I stared at her wide, childlike eyes. How could I leave my loving, erratic, harebrained mother to fend for herself? Of course, she had Phil now, so the bills would probably get paid. There would be food in the refrigerator, gas in her car, and someone to call when she got lost. But still, I want to go, I lied. I'd always been a bad liar, but I'd been saying this lie so frequently lately that it sounded almost convincing now. Tell Charlie I said hi. I will. See you soon, she insisted. You can come home whenever you want. I'll come right back as soon as you need me. But I could see the sacrifice in her eyes behind the promise. Don't worry about me, I urged. It'll be great. I love you, Mom. She hugged me tightly for a minute and then got on the plane. And then I got on the plane, and she was gone. So now our character Bella is leaving her mom and going on a plane to fly to live with her dad. Let's keep reading. It's a 4-hour flight from Phoenix to Seattle, another hour in a small plane to Port Angeles, and then an hour drive back down to Forks. Flying doesn't bother me. The hour in the car with Charlie, though, I was a little worried about that. Charlie had really been fairly nice about the whole thing. He seemed genuinely pleased that I was coming to live with him for the first time with any degree of permanence. He had already gotten me registered for high school and was going to help me get a car. But it was sure to be awkward with Charlie. Neither of us was what anyone would call verbose, and I didn't know what there was to say regardless. I knew he was more than a little confused by my decision. Like my mother before me, I hadn't made a secret of my distaste for Forks. So he's wondering, why would she want to come back and live in Forks? She doesn't like Forks at all. Let's keep reading. When I landed in Port Angeles, it was raining. I didn't see it as an omen, just unavoidable. I'd already said my goodbyes to the sun. Charlie was waiting for me with the cruiser. This I was expecting to. Charlie is the police chief swan to the good people of Forks. My primary motivation behind buying a car, despite the scarcity of my funds, that means scarcity of my funds means you do not have a lot of money, was that I refused to be driven around town in a car with red and blue lights on top. Nothing slows traffic down like a cop. So what we just learned is that her dad was a police officer. So whenever he'd need to drive her around places, he would drive her in a police car. That's why she bought her own car, even though it costs a lot of money. Charlie gave me an awkward one-armed hug when I stumbled my way off the plane. It's good to see you, Bells, he said, smiling as he flipped to page 6. Automatically caught and steadied me. You haven't changed much. How's Renee? Mom's fine. It's good to see you too, Dad. I wasn't allowed to call him Charlie to his face. I had only a few bags. Most of my Arizona clothes were too permeable for Washington. My mom and I had pooled our resources to supplement my winter wardrobe, but it was still scanty. It all fit easily into the trunk of the cruiser. It was still scanty. That means she did not have a lot of clothes to bring with her. She was moving and everything just fit in the back of her dad's car, his cop car. Let's keep reading. I found a good car for you, really cheap, he announced when we were strapped in. What kind of car? I was suspicious of the way he said, good car for you, as opposed to just good car. Well, it's a truck, actually, a Chevy. Where did you find it? Do you remember Billy Black down at La Push? La Push is the tiny Indian reservation on the coast. No. He used to go fishing with us during the summer, Charlie prompted. That would explain why I didn't remember him. I do a good job of blocking painful, unnecessary things from my memory. He's in a wheelchair now, Charlie continued when I didn't respond, so he can't drive anymore, and he offered to sell me his truck cheap. What year is it? I could see him from his change of expression. This wasn't the question he was hoping. This was the question he was hoping I wouldn't ask. Well, Billy's done a lot of work on the engine. It's only a few years old, really. I hoped he didn't think so little of me as to believe I would really give up that easily. When did he buy it? He bought it in 1984, I think. Did he buy it new? Well, no. I think it was new in the early 60s, or the late 50s at the earliest, he admitted sheepishly. So right now, you probably think Bella is feeling kind of upset. She was so excited for a new car, but the one her dad helped her find is from the early 1960s. That was like many years ago. Dad, I don't know anything about cars. I wouldn't be able to fix it if anything went wrong, and I can't really afford a mechanic. Really, Bella, the thing runs great. They don't build them like that anymore. The thing, I thought to myself. It had possibilities, as a nickname at the very least. How cheap is cheap? After all, that was the part I couldn't compromise on. Well, honey, I kind of already bought it for you, as a homecoming gift. Charlie peeked sideways at me with a hopeful expression. Wow. Free. You didn't need to do that, Dad. I was going to buy myself a car. I don't mind. I want you to be happy here. He was looking ahead at the road when he said this. Charlie wasn't comfortable with expressing his emotions out loud. I inherited that from him. So I was looking straight ahead as I responded. That's really nice, Dad. Thanks. I really appreciate it. No need to add that my being happy in Forks is an impossibility. He didn't need to suffer along with me. And I never looked a free truck in the mouth or engine. Page 8. Well, now you're welcome, he mumbled, embarrassed by my thanks. We exchanged a few more comments on the weather, which was wet, and that was pretty much it for the conversation. We stared out the windows in silence. It was beautiful, of course, I couldn't deny that. Everything was green. The trees, their trunks covered with moss, their branches hanging with a canopy of it, the ground covered with ferns, even the air filtered down greenly through the leaves. It was too green, an alien planet. Eventually we made it to Charlie's. He still lived in the small 2-bedroom house that he'd bought with my mother in the early days of their marriage. Those were the only kinds of days their marriage had, the early ones. There, parked on the street in front of the house that never changed, was my new to me, truck. It was a faded red color with big rounded fenders and a bulbous cab. To my intense surprise, I loved it. I didn't know if it would run, but I could see myself in it. Plus, it was one of those solid iron affairs that never gets damaged, the kind you see at the scene of an accident, paint unscratched, surrounded by the pieces of the foreign car it had destroyed. Wow, Dad, I love it, thanks. Now my horrific day tomorrow will be just that much less dreadful. I wouldn't be faced with the choice of either walking 2 miles in the rain to school or accepting a ride in the Chief's cruiser. I'm glad you like it, Charlie said gruffly, embarrassed again. It took only one trip to get all my stuff upstairs. I got in the west bedroom that faced out over the front yard. The room was familiar. So actually right here at the top of page 9, Michael, we're going to stop for today. If you finish today, or if there's still more time left, then you can try reading some on your own or go back and listen and reread.